in India, we have been related with sustainability for a very long time. I go back, 10,000 years and I say, Mata Bhumihi Putro Ham Prithivyaha. The earth is the mother and I am a son.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another enlightening session of the CFO Story Mastermind Podcast. Today, we delve into a critical and timely topic that is leveraging sustainable finance strategies for environmental, social, and governance integration. As businesses worldwide is shifting towards sustainability, integrating ESG principles into finance strategies has become crucial for the long term success. So, we will explore how sustainable finance can enhance environmental and social outcomes while driving business resilience and growth. So, to guide us through this important discussion, we have an exceptional panel of experts. So, I'm honored to welcome our moderator, Mr. Jogendra Singh, President Finance with Hero Enterprises Limited. Along with him, we have our esteemed panelist, Mr. Siddhartha Khaitan, CFO with ESME Consumer Private Limited, and Mr. Ashish Maheshwari, CFO with Apollo Health and Lifestyle Limited. So, in today's session, each of them brings a wealth of knowledge and unique perspectives on sustainable finance. So, without a further ado, let's dive into this compelling and insightful session. Over to you, Jogendra.
Thank you, Shreya. Thank you for this introduction to the topic. I think it's a very important and very timely topic. The sustainability, today's time cannot be overemphasized. And in fact, I always talk about this when I talk about sustainability, especially in the Indian context. I back to our ethos and I say, look, in India, we have been related with sustainability for a very long time. I go back, 10,000 years and I say, Mata Bhumihi Putro Ham Prithivyaha. The earth is the mother and I am a son. Or I say, Pavan Guru Pani Pita Mata Dharat Mahat. And today, what are we talking about? We're talking about air. We're talking about water. We're talking about earth. That's as far as, environment part of the E is concerned. Similarly, social. Our community, we have been made of the large communities, and that community thinking has always been our very core thought process. And we used to say, Sangachadhvam samvadadhvam samvo manansi janatam deva bhagam yatha purve sanjanana upasate. I mean, all of us should think alike, walk alike. Similarly, on governance part also, we go back to Chanakya, and Chanakya said, Balishad bhagam mudratya, tapasya rakshita braja. That means give me 1/6 of your money as, earning as tax, and I will take care of you as praja, as my people. So look at all of this total aspect of environmental, social, and governance. But somewhere in the race of profiteering, probably we left this behind. And today the focus is once again coming back to people, planet, profit. All of this as one part of the puzzle and not really different parts of the puzzle, or the not disintegrated part, but more like an integrated part of the puzzle. It is very important for us today as CFOs, as finance professionals, to really see when we look at our strategies, when we look at financial strategies, how do we engage with these stakeholders and make sure that all strategies, business strategies that we are weaving around have that impact on sustainability woven into our strategies. So that, in my view, is very important. It is no longer a trend. It is a necessity. The way we are approaching sustainable finance, has a profound implications on our economy, on our society, and the environment. So today we are trying to look at this in a very wholesome way and look at different areas that we would be covering. So incorporation of ESG factors into financial strategies is the first thing that we look at. Then also we would like to look at what are the challenges when you implement these sustainable finance initiatives. What are these initiatives and how can these initiatives can really be made successful? These challenges can be overcome. Another very important part of this discussion is going to be measurement and reporting of the impact of ESG on financial performance. Today we started with GRI standards of reporting, and then today, even in India, the BRSR, Business Responsibility and Sustainability Reporting, has become compulsory for a few large companies. And I'm sure going forward, this would be the same for everybody. So therefore, how do we look at that? What are the best practices, that we look at this? How do we collaborate across different departments? Because this is not something that can be done by only one person, only by one department. It has to be a company-wide responsibility. It has to be woven into the KRA of each individual. Then only it can really be effective. So we have to bring not only efficiency, but also effectiveness. And then what is the role of stakeholders in the sustainable finance, especially? So when we navigate through these topics, I encourage all of us to really think about the broader implications of sustainable finance. How can your organizations continue to this growing movement? What steps can you take to ensure that the financial strategies are not only just profitable, but also responsible and sustainable? So we come back to people, profit, and planet, together. So let's embark on this journey with my first question to Siddharth. Siddharth, we talk about, all of this, but this is not an easy path, and there are a lot of challenges. So what are these common challenges that your organization has faced while implementing sustainable finance initiative, and how can you overcome these?
Right. Thank you, Jogendra. I think that's a pretty interesting question to take on. So let me, I think, very quickly also mention a few facts on the ESG front, which, from a regulatory standpoint, there is no real regulation which is governing it in totality. There are bits and pieces, fragmented pieces in place, yet we are still asked to look at ESG as a whole, which I think is one of the fundamental challenges which are there. And just to kind of name a few, though I also feel that the regulation is moving towards ESG, things like, when you talk about things like a CSR, which is the corporate social responsibility, also has quite a bit of an element of ESG into it. We talk about the change in SEBI regulations, which is the listing LODR as it is defined, effective from 22-23, which also talked about business sustainability, responsibility and sustainability statement to be published. So these are all steps which are being undertaken by the regulator to get into the ESG framework. However, to also give you a different side of things. So, for example, as part of the social side of things, which is you do not want to have child labor. So you have a specific act which is there towards child labor. You have different sets of pollution acts, environmental acts, which gets applied to organization. But somewhere, I think one of the fundamentals which I'm really talking about is a need to get a little more regulatory framework into this activity, which obviously becomes one of the big deterrents for a lot of companies to go out and adopt ESG or to take it forward. Having said that, I think, one of the fundamentals, again, which the companies do not really take on ESG in its full might is about the cost factor. Any new initiative, when you kind of try to bring it on board, would have an incremental cost. Sometimes what, even as finance people, we also fail in our journey or fail in our approach, that the finance role is all about long-term value creation, but incidentally and whether fortunately, unfortunately, you are also supposed to be looking at the current financials, current profitability, and any incremental cost also gets questioned. A very clear example A lot of companies are into packaging through plastic. Plastic is an environmental hazard. We've also got a new regulation which has kind of come in that single-use plastic is to be banned. So that's one part of it. However, in an overall scenario, plastic still is bad. Even if it's not a single-use plastic, it needs to get recycled. Now, if you want to move from a plastic to a sustainable packaging, there is a significant impact which happens in terms of cost. So how do you manage that cost? So that is one of the other areas in which there is a challenge, there is a problem in the way ESG gets adopted or not adopted. The third thing, and which is a fallout from the first thing which I just talked about, let's say I, as an organization, I want to be more socially aware, environmentally aware, get a bit more compliant. And I decide that, I will take the first step and kind of move forward and undertake some of these changes and take on the incremental cost. But then, if my competition does not follow suit, I have a cost disadvantage because suddenly my costs have gone up, my pricing cannot go up. I sit on, let's say, a declined margins at the initial onset, and then at some point in time I will get the benefit of it. But at the initial onset, that is a problem. How do I overcome that? So that again becomes one of the important aspects. The third area, which at least is in my mind, is a lot of ESG talks about a lot of areas in which typically companies do not collect the right kind of data. Now, how do you ensure that the data sets are available? Uh, all of us, every company, every household pays electricity. It is not necessary, so the electrical bill is definitely logged into all the systems together, but not necessarily the electrical units are logged. It's not that it's not available, but it's not available in a reportable format. So what is it that you are trying to do? Are you trying to reduce your units? Are you trying to transfer the units from your current state to a renewable source? A lot of these data points are not available on a sustained basis. It needs to be made available.
Some wonderful points, actually. I'll just move to Ashish. Siddharth has made some very good points about reporting, incremental cost, looking at long-term value creation versus short-term quarter-to-quarter view. So Ashish, while we talk about this, there is a very important aspect of measuring and reporting ESG, impact. So what metrics and tools, that you're using, and how does that get impacted, and how do you ensure transparency and accuracy in the ESG reporting?
So first and foremost, thanks for the question, Jogendra, and I also wanted to appreciate the kind of great quotes in Sanskrit that you initially quoted during the start of the session. For me, that was really insightful because generally in many meetings and all, you at times you get stuck up to a lot of technical jargons and a lot of regulatory thresholds, and the common sense aspect gets at times missed, and the root in root concepts gets missed. So once you said that, that aligned me to that, and that brings me to an important aspect. I was just thinking while you were making your point, impromptu, that in accounting there has been always been a concept of going concern. Now,
Right.
going concern says that, and it's been a historical concept across all the standards, whether it is Indian GAAP, whether it is US GAAP, whether it was IFRS, whether it's the current new Ind AS, everywhere. The concept says that the company can go on and it is can be sustainable. If I apply the same concept, basically how the planet and how the earth can go on, because till that time, if that doesn't go on, then no company can go on. So basically, in simple terms, just taking a cue from what you were saying in the beginning, going concept for me has been redefined. Now, going concern means that how everything else is also going concern, it is sustainable. And that's actually the essence of ESG. And now coming to your question, which you asked as to what are the key metrics. So first and foremost, the in ESG, and I'll not go into the definition because Siddharth has wonderfully explained that any which ways. I'll just keep it crisp in terms of the metrics. So the key in ESG metrics can be uh, simply quoted in three parts, which is environmental metrics, social metrics, and governance metrics. For environmental metrics, there are few aspects which are generally resorted to by all the companies, including our respective organizations. In few of these, the first one could be the greenhouse emission metric in the environmental side, as to how we are measuring and reporting the scope 1 to 3 emissions, and indicating direct emissions from owned and controlled sources, indirect emissions from purchased energy, or any other kind of emission across the value chain. The second could be energy consumption, as to how and what is the total quantum of energy that we are consuming in the organization. Third, and I'm just keeping it very simple, third is waste water usage, could be how what is the quantum of water that we are using. And fourth, in very simple term, is waste management, whether we are managing our waste properly, are we recycling it, and are there initiatives to minimize the waste and promote any kind of circular economy practices. So these could be the broad barometers on the environmental metrics. On the social metrics, and it resonates more with all the organization in the HR framework, and many of these metrics are also at times reported in our annual report, whether it's carbon reporting or whether it is any other kind of IFC control reporting as well. So it anyways resonates with a lot of the technical aspects either ways. But on the social metrics, anything to do with product safety, are we having a lot of quality aspect, and a lot of companies have quality teams. Same applies to my organization as well. So we measure the quality aspects. Are we monitoring the proper quality? Are we complying with all the regulations and statutory requirements? Are we doing a lot of clinical excellence? And because that is something which we are duty bound to do as part of my industry, healthcare, and we definitely excel in that, and we always aim at sustaining that excellence. So that could be one. The other is mainly related to diversity and inclusion metric, or the employee engagement metrics. So diversity and engagement, diversity and inclusion metric. A lot of times, in all the organizations, we measure the gender ratio. We see whether the company is providing equal opportunities irrespective of gender, irrespective of ethnicity, irrespective of race, etc. We look at employee engagement matrices in our organization, and also in other organizations which I've worked in the past, and my peers are working currently, such as retention rates. Are we doing adequate training for our employees? Are we making sure that they are able to excel, and are we empowering them to excel? So that is about the social metrics. The third is in simple buckets, is the governance metrics. In governance metrics, it's mainly to do with, are we looking at the anti-corruption side of things? Now, many companies have certain anti-bribery laws, compliances, depending on which framework or which geography they are applying to. But irrespective of the geography, the concept remains the same. Are we having a lot of anti-corruption laws? Are we making sure that we are complying with all those practices, whether it is legal practices or whether it's internal practices? So, second could be whether there is a appropriate disclosure and transparency of reporting of executive compensation, and whether there is a parity of pay across the board. Third could be the board composition, and fourth, and which is also one of the most important, the shareholder rights, whether we are actually able to make sure that the rights of the shareholders are secured and preserved. So that's the other part of it. So that's the answer to the first part of your question. Second part, you spoke about technology, but I would possibly connect it with the later parts of the session, because possibly once we have the context setting of the other things, we'll be in a better position to address that.
Yeah,
Just in the spirit of
I think you made some wonderful points and very, very important metrics. We're talking about net zero, circularity, we're talking about waste management, we're talking about safety, employee engagement, employee, health, anti-corruption, FCPA. So there's a whole plethora of kind of metrics which are related with the ESG and the whole gamut of sustainability that we're talking about, and there is absolutely a long way to go. And Siddhartha, come to you. When you're talking about such a vast area to be covered, this cannot be done by one person or one department. This has to be collaboration across departments. So how can organizations foster effective collaboration across documents? And if you can provide a couple of examples, that would be good.
So I think the first thing which I definitely would want to mention is an initiative like an ESG, when you try to run it in the organization, has to be driven through the leadership, because without buy-in from the leadership, whether it's an investor-led leadership, led initiative, or it's a CEO-led initiative, till the time it comes in right from the top, it doesn't get implemented. So I think the alignment at the top is something very, very important. Once that has happened, and I kind of draw back to what Ashish mentioned in terms of metrics. So if tomorrow I need to reduce my fuel consumption, uh, there has to be either a change in the way I produce, change in the way I do a production plan, change in the way, we are kind of, my entire production process may need to be relooked at, which can't be done by a single individual or a single function. It is always a collaborative approach. Different areas, for example, tomorrow I need to get a new product into the market. I need to change my packaging from a plastic to a paper. It has to be led from a marketing to R&D to logistics to production. So a lot of these teams have to come into play. But I think what is more important in all of this is about the fact that what metrics is the organization chasing? And based on the metrics that we are chasing, and we can talk about maybe very quickly three things. Change in packaging has to lead from packaging department, procurement department, R&D, marketing, production, all have to be in the same place, same boat. Similarly, you want to talk about things like, let's say, a social related activity, that one of the fundamentals that I want to do is increase the diversity in my workforce, which then has to be the sales leader has to be aligned, the production leader has to be aligned, the HR team has to be aligned, and accordingly, people are getting sourced accordingly. Moving forward, even then, when we talk about, let's say, a governance, in the governance, one of the most important pieces is about compliances. End of the day, the organization is treated like an individual, which needs to be governed, which needs to have the right set of compliances. Compliances, again, cannot be done by a single function by itself. A multitude of functions have to come in play to kind of play that role out. So so the overall ESG is actually a complete organization involving activity, and people have to come in together to really give the best. Otherwise, it's not really happening.
Yeah, absolutely. So that you made some wonderful points, especially talking about leadership buy-in. Ashish, can you just take this discussion further when I talk about stakeholder engagement in sustainable finance? Why it is crucial, and what approach can be taken to engage with stakeholders effectively, incorporate their feedback into ESG initiatives.
Well, ESG encompasses generally a very, very scattered and wide, diverse array of topics. And all these topics actually connects the interest of various stakeholder groups in any organization and eventually with the company's overall performance. Frankly, company is legally, the way it is quoted, it's a fictitious legal entity, right? It does not have any kind of physical impersonification. So it is always managed by stakeholders. So what are the stakeholders and who are the stakeholders, which are generally very, very critical? It's the investors, employees, customers, and communities. These are the four stakeholders for any company and any corporation. And generally, for any of these stakeholders, it is very important that uh, companies can understand their expectations. They can measure their requirements. They can assess all the risks, and then they can capitalize on any kind of opportunity which, while they are going through this whole subject, along with addressing all the ESG concerns. Till the time capitalization doesn't happen, if the bottom line doesn't play in the picture, and bottom line is also important. In fact, it's very important, right? We cannot ignore it. But at the same time, when we say that, we can also not ignore the ESG factors or the environmental concerns or the social or the governance factors. They are equally important because if they go an array for the short term, possibly we may not feel a lot of impact. But if they go completely in the adverse direction, then long term, medium term, it will come and bite back the organization itself, and then it will eventually kill your bottom line. So it is a circular reference. The way in Excel you have a circular reference, this is a circular reference here as well. So ultimately, for any of these, coming to the core stakeholders, what exactly are the role of these stakeholders? Customers, we have to understand they are the most, customers are king, right? For any company, it's without customers, none of us can survive, right? Customers are the king, so we have to understand their expectations, their preferences, because their expectations would influence the entire ESG strategies for any organization, right? uh, what do they actually expect? They expect sustainable products and practices. They expect good TAT, good responsiveness from the organization. And ultimately, once this is done, integrate all these things into product development and initiatives and service them. So this is the expectation of customers. The second expectation from communities, they are generally very, very integral to ESG initiatives also. Because as local impacts can affect the environment and society, let's say whatever we are doing in locally, that will only impact the environment and the society. So the involvement of communities can help to ensure that the ESG strategies align with local needs and customs, because customs is what runs in the blood of the nation, right? So you have to align yourself with the custom in that particular geography. And India specifically, it's diverse culture means something which is a custom in Delhi could be completely there could be a extremely different custom in Chennai. So ultimately, you have to tailor yourself and adapt yourself to the local customs. And then once you do that, you can actually have a sustainable and smooth operations. The third is investors. Third are investors. Investors, what are they interested in? Generally, they're interested in two aspects. One, or maybe three aspects. One, sustainable organizational practices and sustainability of operations. Second, enhancement of profitability and continued enhancement and continued CAGR. And third is actually enhanced enterprise valuation, which is a derivative of the first two. So ultimately, investors will focus on all these things. And in case if ESG factors can evaluate all the potential risks and returns of the investments, their investments, they will be able to mitigate and the risks, and they will be able to drive these strategies. So they will be actually will be able to fulfill them. And the last, and I'm generally very always very very conscious of the time aspect. So this is my fourth and last point to address this question. The employees, which is essential to the ESG strategy implementation, because without employees, who will drive these strategies? Otherwise, it will be a book of codification laws, and we will just be mellowed and completely swallowing only the theoretical aspects. Employees are the backbone. A workforce that can experience a conducive work environment is more likely to be motivated and ultimately generate and support ESG goals. The other stakeholders, and I'll not go in details, they are the suppliers, boards, or shareholders. But I think shareholders are covered mainly along with the investors. The same
Yes.
theme applies, and other stakeholders, suppliers applies the similar way. We have to take good quality of products to make sure that we service the customer. So this is how
I think you're making some wonderful points, and then when we talk about investors, or we talk about secularity, when we talk about cradle to cradle, that reminded me of this wonderful book, Cradle to Cradle by William McDonough, where he talks about not cradle to grave, but cradle to credit. So there is a secularity in the sustainability question. Siddharth, maybe I would like you to just maybe answer this in a little brief way. When I talk about on long-term value, creation, you talked about this in your first response also. So how do you see impact of sustainable finance on long-term value creation?
I think long-term value creation is the bedrock of what finance really does. And any kind of initiative has to lead to that. That's one. Second, I think the way the world is moving in, the whole concept of being environmental friendly, and the whole, let's say, the concept of ESG itself is kind of gaining fruit substantially. With that, and just this is just to kind of also get a little perspective. When you talk about private equity investments, VC investments, which is happening, they very, very clearly are looking at ESG practices in the company before they are deploying funds. Now, what is the reason why they are doing so? It's not that they are just trying to increase the cost burden of the company, but the reason for this is it's all about change in consumer behavior, change in customer needs as we are going along, which is the reason why they believe that companies which are more sustainable, which are more compliant to the environment, to social needs, will be the ones which will actually prosper and be far more profitable. So that's the reason why this is happening. Now, having said that, uh, what does it really do? One, it helps to get people very clearly understand the customer behavior very much in advance, start preparing for it much in advance. That's one thing which you are really able to do, so that by the time the consumer behavior hits the tipping point, you are ready, you are there.
Yeah.
Second thing which it does to you is in a long term, It's a very simple thing, like a saving in energy because it's an environmental friendly activity to be done. On the finance front, it's a clear cost saving initiative which is happening. If you're able to reduce your energy consumption, it gives you an extra dollar. So how do you get that thing in place? The other thing which also happened, and I think we talked about it, Ashish did talk about it. Companies, the youth today want to work for people or want to work for companies which are environmentally friendly. So when you see that you are an ESG organization, we are promoting ESG, it helps you to attract talent. Now, just to give you a practical couple of examples which I picked up, UPS, which is one of the largest parcel delivery system in US, they managed to reduce their logistics costs by deploying ESG practices. With the fundamental about how do you save on delivery costs, how do you save on fuel consumption, they did manage to do a complete exercise and reduce the overall delivery cost. The second, again, a company which is in the name of everyone, which is Tesla. Tesla is known for their EV vehicles. Now, obviously, it's an aspirational car, but what is it doing? Why is it aspirational? Is it just the aesthetics? Or it is probably the first EV in the world which is proved to be so aspirational that people have forgotten about the ESG element. It is not consuming any fossil fuel. So, these are two companies which have really been able to take ESG to the next level and say that I have been able to drive value out of ESG. And
Yes.
I do believe long-term value will get created once we are able to deploy it in totality. A couple of companies have already displayed, and I'm sure a lot of other companies are there, which are doing the same thing.
I'm sure Indian companies would also reach there, and a lot of Indian companies I have seen are going toward that direction. Ashish, in brief, you talked about technology. Maybe what role does technology play in advancing sustainable finance initiatives and kind of innovation that you think? How can they enhance the ESG strategy?
So first and foremost, actually, Indian companies, just to take a cue of the last point, Indian companies have already reached there. Because for either the companies have reached there or the Indians have been part of those companies which have reached there. So whichever way, Indians are actually ruling the roost. So because generally in any other geography, it's the regulation which is driving the ESG implementation. For India, it's in the core and the belief in the root system. So any which way, invariably, when we are doing our daily discourse of activities, we are actually pursuing ESG initiatives, whether it is treating the employee, whether we are treating the employee diversity, etc. It's part of our culture. So we are already there. And now coming to your particular question on the technology aspect. See, without technology, nothing sustains. Even where for finance, as a CFO or in finance function, technology is a differentiating factor, which is an enabling factor. Till the time that it doesn't act as an enabler, lot of actually finance professional may end up just doing accounting or controlling activities because they will not be able to delegate many of those areas and move into the strategic finance part of it as a CFO. The same applies to ESG, and it is an enabler. Now, what could be the enabler? There could be data analytics, advanced machine learning techniques, or AI techniques, which is generally the core areas of technologies which generally fosters. Just to also tell what exactly are the key role of technology, generally an influential factor in investment decision making is the incorporation of ESG consideration, which has been facilitated by technological advancements. What are the areas that they cover? They give any strong technological advancements will give you transparency of data. Until the time there's no transparency of data, you would actually not be able to measure the outcomes. Until the time you won't be able to measure the outcomes, it will again only become a theoretical and a codified subject. So you need technology to do that. Number one. Number two, the access to ESG data and ratings can be given by technology, and because technology equips investors with powerful tools, granting them access to a wealth of ESG data, and that can be used for having a nuanced evaluation and comparison of sustainability practices with respect to your competitors or other companies. And we can use and leverage real-time and historical ESG metrics to make well-informed decisions. So that's one. That's the number 2 point. Number third point, it helps in doing informed capital allocation, because till
Yeah.
the time you don't have adequate technology aspect, you will not be able to integrate ESG factors into investment decisions. Until the time you don't do that, you will not be able to evaluate the traditional financial metrics. And once you are not able to do that, how will you be able to shift towards informed capital allocation? Because otherwise you will be making just a mundane and textbook allocation. But you need to have measurement metrics, and technology does that. And my last point in this regard is the rise of impact investing platforms. So till the time there is no rise of impact investment, the financial returns which are pursued alongside positive social and environmental outcomes, that cannot be assessed. And these platforms connect investors with opportunities across the board to contribute to sustainable development. And by leveraging this, investing becomes more accessible, connecting capital with enterprises that generate meaningful impact while delivering competitive financial returns. So these are the technological advances that comes in, and yeah, that's what I
I
look at this
think,
space.
both of you have made some wonderful points covering a very wholesome view of, this topic that we had in our hand. And I thank you, both of you very much. And we also thank Competitors View for this opportunity of, delving on this